Today on Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Mondays, we are taking a look at the Bandai Tamashii Nation's SH Monsterarts, Toho Ultimate Weapon Set number 2, and Godzilla Effects Set number 2. And this is the kind of thing I've been really looking forward to getting out of the SH Monsterarts line. I always want the ability to create dioramas and cool displays with my Monsterarts figures, and I even went so far as to make my own papercraft buildings to populate my Godzilla display. And now Bandai has provided us with some pieces to kind of help us along that journey. The original weapon and effect pack is something that goes for some crazy money online right now. I believe it was one of the Tamashii web exclusives and was not brought over to the United States by Bluefin. That and the Garuda have kind of become holy grails for American collectors in the SH Monsterarts line because they are pretty hard to come across. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that comes in these two sets are re-releases of things that were in the original set, but there are a few notable exceptions that I'll get into as we go through the review. But we've got a lot to look at here, so let's jump right in. First up, we're going to take a look at the Godzilla Effects Set, and this thing is chock full of goodies for making your Godzilla display really pop. We get 2 different beam effects, 2 different ground effects to go with those beams that act as our Tamashii stages this time, the 2 Tamashii arms we do need to hold up those beams, and 4 buildings, all featuring some battle damage that can help populate our destroyed Tokyo. With this set, we basically get 2 of each type of building, 1 large and 1 small. With the small building here, we could see it's kind of set up like maybe a smaller apartment block or something. Almost looks like doorways down here at the bottom, a bunch of windows, and then almost like ledges sticking out all over the building. Continues onto this side with no windows, and then very similar look on the back. The back is nice because it hides pretty much any of the battle damage, so if you actually want to have some pristine buildings in your display, this works pretty well. The paint job on here is kind of lacking though. It's just a flat gray of the plastic the building's molded in with some pretty decent black highlighting on it, shading in there, but it really doesn't give the illusion of there being windows or any real detail in this whatsoever. But the damage is really nice. I like that they cut across the corner here with it, so you get a lot of options on how you want to display it and how you want to see the damage. You can definitely see a nice rubble texture on the inside there, and they very much hit it with the dark paint. This kind of damage is perfect if you want to have like a tail swinging into the building or something. It pretty much lines up perfectly with something like that. The other cool thing, here on the top of the building, we actually have a little port sticking out the top that can hold one of the Tamashii arms. So you can actually use this as a stage for whatever effects you have going on above it. Now, a word of caution, this building especially, but both buildings are pretty light, and because this one's pretty small, you kind of have to be careful, make sure it's balanced correctly, because it does have a tendency to topple over once you put something on it and move it around. It's really not going to balance unless you center the weight directly above the building. But one setup I've actually been able to get pretty decently on here is using the cradle that comes with Rodan that holds him in more of a sitting pose, and having him look like maybe he's just kind of kicking off and launching himself off the building into battle. This arm is short enough and Rodan's easy enough to balance that I think you can actually make a pretty cool effect with these 2 parts together. The big building is kind of more of the same we get with the smaller building. We get some windows going on here. No real entryway look at the bottom or anything like that. No ledges. Just the windows carved in. Some smaller ones on the side. Maybe this is a staircase or something. Absolutely nothing on the narrow end, which actually does bug me quite a bit. And then more of the same kind of pattern repeated on the back. And then we have a very large crushed area here on the side. I really like the look of this. It's a lot more damage, a lot more jagged, and then kind of cracking down onto either side of the building, so it really does take up a whole lot more real estate on here than the effect on the smaller building did. Same paint scheme as the smaller building as well, and another place to plug in one of the Tamashii arms, so you once again use this as a stage, and it does balance a little bit better. The next pieces to look at in this set are the breath effects parts, and these are 2 very, very similar looking breath effects. These are the more commonly released ones, and ironically this is the first time I've gotten them. This same design was originally released with the first run of the original Godzilla figure that Monsterarts put out. It was done in a blue for that one and has never been done in blue again, which drives me up the wall. It was then released in that second effects part set in a more fiery red, and here we get it in 2 different versions of a very similar look. This one here kind of has a yellowy brown at the end where it splays out and becomes more of the impact part of the effect, and it's mostly translucent down the rest of the body body of the effect piece. There's some decent texture in there, making it look like it is a breath effect, and overall I think it works pretty well. It also tapers down here at the end to fit better into Godzilla's mouth. The other piece goes a little heavier with that brownish yellow, and it's on both ends, both where it leaves the mouth and at the impact end. And then the rest of the body almost has a white or a silvery kind of sheen to it, giving it a different look. It's subtle, and I don't really know if it's completely necessary, but heck, I'm not going to complain about getting two of them. They each come with their own Tamashii arm, which is what we're used to with these figures. If you haven't seen them before, they have a hinge here at the bottom, they hinge at the middle, and then they hinge at the top. And then we get two different ground effect pieces to go with the blasts. So we get this kind of energy wave coming out. This is also a repaint of the original release. This was done in a blue with the first one, done in a red with that first effects kit, and here we get that same kind of brownish yellow carrying over onto it. And I think it's pretty cool looking. It's a nice just surge of energy going across the ground. It's not something I think we've ever seen in a Godzilla movie, but it's a cool visual effect. The only downside to it is once you plug the Tamashii arm in, it can't go back any further. It kind of sits at 90 degrees. You can go pretty far forward, but you can't really lean it back towards Godzilla, so you kind of have to be a little creative in how you pose it. It also won't rotate once it's down there in the base because of the way these waves are sculpted. I do like it just because it does kind of cover up part of the stand, especially the hinge joint, which is more obvious than, say, the clear stand coming up. So you can definitely try to hide your effect pieces a little more than you normally can with just the flat bases, but just something to consider. The other base I really like, it's this kind of torn up ground segment. You got all the rubble coming here on the side. There's some nice different variations in the paint, making it look like there's shadows and dirt and just giving it a very organic look. Your peg's right here in the middle. And with this one, you can rotate the arm around. You can move it pretty far forward and back, so no real limitations to your movement with this stand. And the other cool part with it is you can use it for other things. You could have it on its own just as a decimated piece of ground in your cityscape, or Mothra fits pretty well on top of it, looking like it's tearing up the ground as it moves. If Monsterarts ever gives us a character that burrows like Anguirus or Baragon, this could actually even be something cool to have leading up to his emergence in your diorama scene. And last but not least for this set, we get an explosion effect, and this is so cool looking. It's cast in a nice translucent orange plastic, but they did some great paint variations on it. There's some areas that are dark, looking smoky, and the tips sticking out here, the very sharp tips, kind of fade off to a nice yellow. Some parts of the orange even are painted in to give it different gradations to the fire. And the back here is white, which I think is kind of weird, but you're probably not going to see that part too much. And this is cool almost on its own. You can kind of try to put it on the side of your building or something, look like there's an explosion going on. But the real plus with it is there is a hole right down here that your Tamashii arm will plug into. Then you can take one of your breath effects and it will just plug right in here and stay in with friction, and you could have Godzilla's beam ending in a giant fiery explosion, which is really, really cool. And true to its name, the Ultimate Weapon set gives us a lot of things to combat Godzilla. We get 3 planes, the Super X3, 4 of the Maser tanks, and 4, I guess, straight up Masers, and then 2 more buildings. The 2 buildings, 1 of each, are exactly the same as what we got in the other set, so I'm not going to talk any more about them. The planes are incredibly tiny, but very well detailed. You can see they are very well sculpted. You have the little Maser cannons on the edge of the wing, kind of hawk-shaped cockpit there. It's got the landing gear, little tiny orange paint detail on there, and even the back tail of it looks great. Just very well done for something so incredibly tiny. On the bottom here in the middle, there is a little hole, and you could use those holes to peg these 3 little guys onto their stands, and this will peg on top of your standard Tamashii arm. Then you could have them flying above your kaiju. Now, this was something that was released with the original effects set, so if you have that, now you got some more. If you didn't have that, well, now you have them. And the plus side with this arm is you can rotate around here, so you can bring the planes into different formations, and you can turn them by moving this arm up here so that you don't actually have to mess with the planes. And also, while the fit is a little loose, you can actually use this stand for the helicopters that came with Godzilla Jr. So if you wanted to maybe have a helicopter flanked by 2 of these ships, or if you wanted to have the 2 2 helicopters on either side of one of these ships, you could actually make that setup happen, which is kind of cool. You can see it's not perfect, it wobbles around a little bit, but if you're not going to touch it, you're just going to have it sitting there static, you can get the effect pretty well. Next up, we have our little tank, and this is very well detailed. You can see it's got the treads in there sculpted. The treads are actually black on there. Nice army green for the rest of it. The little maser cannon arms coming off here. Little section back there where you can see something going on in white paint. And you can rotate this upper turret 360 degrees. And you get 4 of these little guys, which are great. These were another piece that came with that first effects set, but something you could always army build, literally. And continuing in that same vein, you get 4 more of these masers that you also got in that original effects set. These look great. It's got the 6 wheels painted black on there. Nice army green. You can see the cockpit up there. Has a translucent middle section here on the maser, which is really cool. And the cannon itself. And once again, this backpack will spin 360 around on the back of the truck. And here you can see all 4 tanks that we've gotten over the course of these lines. The 2 ones from this current set here on the left, and the 2 from the Burning Godzilla figure on the right. The ones from Burning Godzilla are specific to that figure since they are supposed to be the freezing weapons instead of just the more standard weapons that we get with the rest of these series. And I do hope eventually we'll get some more of those vehicles. You can see there is some reused parts between the 2, but they are definitely all different little vehicles. Next up, we get the Super X3, which is from Godzilla vs. Destroya, and I'm pretty excited to have this. I love the little Super X vehicles, and this was my favorite design of all 3 of them. Now this is the first release of this piece, but with the previous effects set, they released the Super X2, and quite honestly, that's the biggest reason why I want to get my hands on that set, is I would love to have a Super X2, especially now having the X3. Matching the little tanks, that has a great army green paint job on it, and a lot of great sculpted detail on here, all the little panel lines, the vents. We've got the boosters in the back, which look absolutely wonderful. Got a couple little guns here on different parts of the wing, and of course the cockpit painted a nice orange. On the other side right now I have the 3 sections with landing gear, but these are removable and they are a pain in the butt. When it's in landing gear form, they are easier to take off because you actually have something to hold on to, but once you install the flight gear, it's very hard to get your fingers on it. You probably have to use a tweezer or something, just try not to scratch the paint or the plastic. And then also I recommend putting these straight back into the box they came in because I could see these being very easy to lose. But you pop the 2 rear landing gear pieces off. And then for the front of the vehicle, when you go to pop it off, it pulls out this whole section. The long section here will stay with the vehicle, but the wheels will pull right out of that. On the back here, we have 2 little fins that will plug in. And then while we have that long section from the bottom out, I'm also going to remove the nose of the plane. And now that the nose of the plane is opened up, we can insert the cannon piece in the front and have it in battle mode. Then we take that long piece from the bottom, insert the little fin into it, then peg it right back into the bottom of the plane. And now our landing gear is all tucked away, or removed as it were. But wait, there's more. We can also remove this top section here and install what I believe in the movie were the cadmium missiles meant to cool down Godzilla's radioactive core. And now they just look like they've raised up out of the top of the vehicle, and there's some vents in the back as well that kind of match the rest of the vehicle. Because it is such a pain in the butt to change out these parts, I am probably going to forever leave my Super X3 in attack mode and pack away these extra pieces and probably not touch them again, because that was a real pain to install all this stuff on it. This set comes with a Tamashii stage of its own, which is very cool looking. They went with a red background with this kind of splattered on black and Godzilla's name and Japanese characters across the front, copyright info down below. Standard shape of a stage, but cool that they gave us this kind of different look to it. I do always prefer the clear ones, especially because I display my figures on the Detolf shelf, which has glass shelves in it, so I think it kind of helps make it as invisible as possible when they're see-through, but it's nice to get this. We also get the Tamashii arm that will peg right in there, and then we have a problem. We have 1 arm and 2 pieces that need it. We either choose to peg in the Super X3 or our trio of fighter jets. Fortunately, if you're like me, you've been collecting enough of these figures, you have a few extra arms laying around. And quite honestly, so far I've been using the base that came with King Ghidorah as a display piece, because while with any of these bases you have the 3 different ports to plug in the stand, this one of course comes with plugs in the 2 extra holes. Ghidorah's all 3 are open since he's meant to use all 3. And then he has 3 arms and 3 extenders, so I've actually been using his stage to hold all of these flying vehicles, and it just is more convenient that way for me. me. For a few quick comparisons, here are the two buildings that came with this set, along with my building here in the background that I made to go with my Godzilla displays. And here in the front I have one of the Mogira stand pieces that includes some buildings in it. As you can see, those buildings are a little better detailed than the ones we got with these sets, but I think they work well enough together that you can maybe find a way to put this base into your display along with them. And I do hope eventually they will give us some skyscraper-sized buildings to go along with these. I like these. These are a great scale for average buildings in a city, but I think a couple little landmark pieces, or at least some larger pieces, would really help make a better looking set. Right now, your only real option to make it feel like a real skyline is to put something underneath one of these buildings and use clever angles to make it look like it's taller than it actually is. And speaking of the little Mogira street scene, these tanks are definitely a little bigger than they need to be with it. Now, this being an outlying piece, I'm not really dinging this set for making their tanks the size they do, but as you can see on here, they take up what is essentially a 2-lane road and the sidewalk. And I think the helicopter is even bigger still by comparison. Assuming this tiny section on the front of the Maser tank is the cockpit, you can see the helicopter is quite a bit bigger than that. But these are some minor scaling issues when you're dealing with stuff that's getting this small, and really I'm just being nitpicky with all this. I just wanted to show off what the scale is looking like between all these pieces we have now. And just for comparison's sake as well, here we have the beam from this new kit, which is honestly the oldest beam that exists, compared to the spiral ray beam that came with Rodan. That beam is the only one that will not work with the explosion piece. All the other ones have used this mold that we got here. Even though they don't quite all fit on camera, the spiral ray is at least 1.5 inches, 2 inches longer than these other beams. So if you did have the spiral ray, which is probably the easiest beam effect to get up to this point, and you have trouble fitting it in your display, there's now a more compact version. And since you already saw how these effects stack up with the Monsterarts figures they're supposed to go with, here's a quick look at the beam effect and the buildings with the NECA Godzilla 1994, my Japanese Bandai Gamera figure, and unless something changes, the subject of next week's Giant Monster Monday, the Mini Mates Godzilla figures from Diamond Select. It's funny because I think these buildings actually still work with these little guys, and I'll probably use some photo shoots with them as well. And as you can see here in the background, I'm using some angles to make that one building look a little bigger and just hiding what it's on. A little sloppy in this execution, but you get the idea. So I absolutely love these sets. There's no beating around the bush here. I recommend to anybody who wants to have an SH Monsterarts diorama that just kicks some serious ass. And I know that's not everybody. Some people are probably just completely happy having the figures and having them on a shelf, and that's all they want, and that's totally fine. But for me, I love being able to build these dioramas. I love creating scenes I can photograph and just have fun with these things. And I have spent so much more time with these two little effects sets than I have with so many action figures, just because there's so many things you could do with it. When it comes down to recommending one over the other, I'm going to say the weapon set is the one to get. If you had to pick one, the weapon set is the one I've gotten the most mileage out of in terms of displaying, posing, all that fun stuff. I definitely think you should get both, but I'm probably going to go back and pick up a couple more of the weapon sets just to army build the tanks and to get some more buildings out of it. Now, getting the effect set with the beams and everything, that will build your supply of buildings much faster, but in getting this together for this little shot here, I'm realizing that I actually can't even get all my buildings in this display right now. So maybe I don't need as many buildings as I once thought I did, depending on the shots I want to take. So I know for sure I'm at least picking up one more set of the weapons, get more tanks, more buildings, more planes. Not really sure what I'm going to do with another Super X3, but I'll figure that out when I come to it. And also, if it makes a difference, the effect set, the coolest thing in it, the most original thing in it at the moment is the explosion piece, and I don't believe it's going to be a re-release of this one, but Tamashii is releasing an explosion effect set that basically comes with 3 little balls of explosions that you could have individually, or you can even stack them up to make a big explosion. And they're also doing that in a smoke style instead of just the big exploding piece. piece. I think I'm going to look into picking those up as well, because I think that could really add to this whole diorama here. But yeah, super high recommend for all this stuff. I absolutely love it. If you've been following me on Facebook and Instagram, I ask you to at the end of every video, but I'm going to put it out here right now. I got the weapon set in first, and the day that I got them, I spent hours making new displays, making all kinds of neat stuff with it. And I posted a decent amount to both Facebook and Instagram, as well as places like Articulated Comic Book Art and the Godzilla Collectors group on Facebook. So let me know what you guys think. Are you guys going to be picking up these sets? If so, how many of them? Is one of each enough, or do you need to army build these things? And as I already mentioned, check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been our Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Monday. Stay tuned for more to come.